Welcome to our lunch town hall. Vijaya is going to be sharing all of her life experience in the security world, so we're super excited to hear all about it. I wanted to start opening it up to the audience, so we'll be passing around the mic. No question is a bad question, in theory, yes. Anything you guys are curious about, any range at all, let's start a dialogue. So, does anyone want to start with any questions?
Test, finger. All right, so we're talking a lot about the pipeline and bringing women into security. I also think it's really important to talk about how we can keep women in security. I'm sure you have thoughts. Can you please share some of them with us?
I think a lot of times women, when they get to some level in their career, that is the same time around which a lot of things are happening on the family side, kids coming along and different things happening. That's usually the time when we see drop off. But the important thing is, it's okay to take a break, and everybody should do what they feel is right in their lives. But keep that hunger, keep that light on in terms of where you want to go ultimately. And then even after a break, if you really think about, I want to get back to my original goal and never lose sight of that, that's really what is required to bring people back into the game. And from a recruiting perspective, companies also obviously have to be open about considering these women that have either taken a break and entering workforce back again. I was recently introduced to an organization that actually focuses on recruiting women in that particular space. Focus on anybody that has taken a break and trying to come back to work and really helping them to get on different roles. Tying up with organizations like that, and companies can do more along those lines, there's no question. But at an individual level, as I was saying, it's really about that true North Star for you and your career, and remembering that and coming back to it at every stage in your life, even if you're taking a break. That's kind of what I would say there.
So, first of all, okay, not everybody has taken a break. Some of us are maybe getting a little bit oppressed by all the sexism that we've experienced in the industry, and I kind of don't want to let this go without mentioning that that is also a thing.
It's also
but how, to turn this more positive, how do you find the companies that are more positive towards women who have taken a break, whether it's for kids or taking care of illnesses of their family, or are just kind of burnt out? How do those companies advertise? How do I find them if I need them?
I don't know if any company goes and advertises it like that, to be honest, right? That's the hard part. But our lifespan, if you take a look at how many years we have for working years and how much we can put up at any given situation, I think a lot of times we tend to take a longer time, even though we have seen the signs that this is not the right place for me, and a lot of stuff is going on here, either from an oppression standpoint, discrimination, whatever you want to call it. We tend to kind of prolong there with the fear of failure if we go to a new place and, hey, we have to get started over all over again. Is that going to be any different, right? And then just try to continue where we are. I think this is something all of us have to also do different and better in the sense of if you've already seen the signs, take a different role. Don't hang out there forever. And there are so many companies, so many opportunities, especially in this area, and with all the talent shortage we've talked about, there is no dearth of opportunities, right? Don't put up with it. Just give something else a try. And while the bad companies are in the news and we hear them a lot, majority of the companies are actually still pretty positive, right? I don't want to over-index on that side and say every company is evil and there are not that many good companies. It's actually the opposite. Most companies are good. And there are a few that are, for whatever reason, they're in the news too much, and we tend to hear about them quite a bit. So go out there, explore other opportunities, see what works for you, and there's always another day. Sorry, what? Actually, I have some other people here as well in the audience. Our Chief Human Resources Officer, Missy. Do you want to add anything on that front from companies and?
Hi everybody. I don't have anything prepared, but I'll take questions too. Yeah, I mean, I think everything you say I agree with. I think that it's just like you hear a lot of things that companies, because it's not going to get much media coverage if it's not dramatic, right? We all know that. That said, there still is a very real issue when it comes to the industry in tech in general, but also in security. So it's not to diminish that, to say it's not something that actually matters and is important. I would say, and Burnley usually is recruiting for us, it's ask questions in the interview. Give them a chance to talk to you about what are they doing. If they're on the spot and can't answer that, that's a problem, right? Because you have some companies who do really great branding around some of the things they're doing, whether it's, we do a lot around parental leave packages and things like that, or transitions back to the workforce. So if you go out on maternity leave, having something where you come back 2 days, then 3 days, then 4 days. So there are things that you can do to create a really supportive environment, but make them talk to you about what specifically they're doing. And if they can't, it's probably a little bit more about branding and marketing than it is about the actual environment being something that is putting their money where their mouth is, I would say.
Thank you for being support there.
Hi.
Go ahead.
So I guess it's a general question. So for someone who's been in IT for a while and is trying to transition into security, what are the fundamental steps?
So it really depends on the job, right? As we have seen, there are many categories and many possibilities even within security. So it really depends on where you are and what kind of role you're looking for, right? So I was talking to somebody earlier. If you have network administrator type of background or non-coding related background, right, and you're trying to get into security, it's better to keep some things constant where you're getting into something new, right? So find something in security that can leverage those types of skills and not change into security and also change the type of role and get into coding at the same time. Make sense? So one step at a time, take one step and get into the field security-wise, or stay where you are, change into coding first, and then get into security. Either way, but one step at a time.
Back to the how you said if they actually have support around, maybe maternity leave or whatever. But what about?
Can you speak?
Oh, sure. It's hard. Yeah. So what about like? Do you think that it's okay to approach a subject at an interview and ask, "Do you have diversity training?" Like, is that an okay question to ask, or like how would you suggest you approach that? So that you're going to be at an equal level or what have you.
It's absolutely okay. It's not really okay. It's good to ask. Even if everybody has standard answers they may give you, you can still make out everybody's problems are slightly different. You can tell from the language, from their style, from what they're offering you, get an assessment of where they stand in that scale. Absolutely encourage everybody to ask those questions. It's not a problem at all, especially these days. It's very well accepted that people are thinking about these sorts of issues and they are top of mind for people. So absolutely.
So I'll answer this. I always, when we talk about on my team, like think about different hats. So yeah, in HR, but it's kind of more important if I think about it from an employee's perspective or a candidate or a manager. I wouldn't let them off the hook that easily, but asking it that way. I would leave it more open-ended, where it's, okay, so you've talked a lot about that diversity is really important. What do you do in your company to demonstrate that? And let them answer. Because if you say diversity training, you're required to take like anti-harassment training. So they can say, oh yeah, check, we do that. So I would ask them that, and then I would also, as a candidate, I would say, okay, now how have you seen the effectiveness of that play out? So how have you seen the improvements from that? And it kind of pushes them on, if they can't answer it, either that unfortunate person who's interviewing you needs to educate themselves on what's going on in the company, or and that might be the person you're working for, or they're really not doing that much about it. So I think it's, that's the way that I think about it, but I don't know, maybe I'm a tough candidate. So the question, as I understood it, was, is it okay and acceptable to ask if you're in an interview, to ask about do you offer diversity training? What's that? What was my response?
You're asking how to rephrase the question.
Her response.
What is a better question to ask is what she's
Oh, I see. I would say, so if I'm the candidate, I would say, so you, assuming they do, because most companies say they value diversity, right? So you talk a lot about diversity being important. What do you do here to demonstrate that that's important? So what do you do to, it's kind of like the money where your mouth is comment. They should at least be able to talk about that, and then I would tag on to that if they're able to answer it. So how have you seen the effectiveness of that play out? So it kind of goes from check the box, technically we have to legally offer this, to like, okay, what are you doing above and beyond that, and is it effective and makes a difference in the culture?
Another thing that I've actually done to address that very thing is asking if I can have a technical woman on my interview panel. So I don't want to take over the town hall because I'm not the speaker. I'd be happy to talk to you after if you want to.
It's all about getting the conversations going, so it's totally fine.
Any other questions right now?
Are there a lot of other women in the cybersecurity startup space that you guys know of and want to give a shout out to?
Sorry, I couldn't actually hear your question. Other women in security startups?
Yeah, like cybersecurity startups, and like, do you want to give us a shout out?
I don't know if I can rattle off all the names off the top of my head, but Deidre, do you know, can you?
I'm forever going to now for the rest of my life. It's the reason I'm even thinking about it. I know all the female leaders of the not-for-profits in cyber, right? So we've got Cyber Jitsu, we've got Equal Respect. Gosh, and they're both female founders, but we'll get a list. We should know that stuff off the top of our heads, right? We promote each other. So I will find out. I can't think of one female founding startup in security right now. Clarity, Ainsley,
Tinfoil.
Tinfoil. Nicole at Dark Trace, yes.
And hence the problem that we're talking about.
yeah, right? Like, that's so powerful. Thank you for asking that question. It's never going to happen again. Oh, I think you said startup.
We totally had it, So, like, we had Amanda Rousseau, Mallory Unicorn, speaking here, and she's an amazing voice in the industry. There's also Katie Musaris, who founded Shecurity. She actually speaks to Congress on a regular basis about security. She's been doing amazing things for security for years and years.
There is an organization called Women in Product. I mean, if you guys have heard about that one. That focuses specifically around anybody in engineering, product management, and also more generally in tech, but also with an emphasis on cybersecurity.
And Women in Security and Privacy is another group who has meetups in the Bay Area that
Next question. Who else has a question or a comment or add to the dialogue? Anything? I have questions. What would you say, Vijaya, is your most memorable moment of being a woman in security, or what would you say, like, the takeaway of your career? Like, what stands out?
That's a loaded question. Memorable versus takeaway. Let me actually talk about a couple of things. I don't know if it's a takeaway or anything, but I was just talking to somebody in the restroom here, and there was a question that came up. This woman, I don't know if she's here in the audience, but she was asking about, yeah, I used to have really long hair earlier, and I cut it really short because I wanted it to be taken seriously. What do you think about that, right? So that's a very interesting question, and it kind of sums up a lot of things that I have thought throughout my career, and where I've settled on, and what actually seems to be working or not working, and all of that. So in a way that probably summarizes a lot of those things. You know, when I was younger in my career, I definitely had thoughts around that too, to kind of see, hey, I was number one, new to the country, not only minority from a woman perspective, but also minority from a ethnic background and other types of things. You know, my accent was different, I looked different, and all of that. My name was very hard to say. Right now, Vijaya is actually a shorter version of my full name. So, you know, lots of things to deal with, right? So it all started with, first, should I just change my name, right? You know, Julia or Julie or something like that was what I was thinking about for a long time. And over all of this thought process and discussions, like somehow kind of settled on, no, that's just my identity. I won't even recognize if somebody calls me by a different name. What's the point of it? So I stuck with my original name, and as I went through my career and started, you know, producing results, and accomplishments have started adding up and other things, and I soon realized that anything else that I was thinking doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's the merit and kind of what you bring to the table. You just have to give people a chance to see what you got and, you know, show your stuff, right? That matters more than anything else. And of course, all the diversity issues and other things aside, for the most part, that's what really matters, right? People will put up with any other kind of differences, idiosyncrasies, and all of that, as long as you're doing really great and producing results and standing out in some fashion. The other thought process also that I realized over time is any differences that I was thinking of as potential issues actually turned out to be advantages, right? Because a lot of times I was the only woman in the room, and people, even if they don't remember my name, they'll say, that woman that was in the room in that meeting, right? And there was not 10 women that I had to stand out from. So it was actually a good thing. So I started embracing a lot of those differences and all of the issues I thought were issues. So as a result, you know, like basically where I ended up is be yourself, be authentic, focus on your work, and let that work represent you, and not worry about anything else at all. Right? So that's the takeaway or summary or whatever that you want to call it.
Thank you. So I had a question about, you know, in the very beginning.
Hey guys in the back. Guys in the back. Appreciate if you keep it down a little bit, please. Thank you.
I think so. In the very beginning today, we mentioned that there's only 11% of women in security, and you know, a lot of people are saying that, oh, that's because women don't go into computer science field in school, and like they don't have interest for the tech, and like that's why it's like that. But you know, when I was growing up as a young girl, I always had I had interest in computer science from day one, like in technology and everything. Like I knew it's what I like. You know, I was a big geek. But I was very discouraged, like in my school, by my parents. I was telling that this is not for a girl. this is like why are you interested in that? And I've been keeping getting this like all the time. And so it was so hard to like get through this adversity. And like even when I was working at a tech company, but I was doing like not a very technical position, when I told like someone that, oh, actually I'm a developer, which is what I'm doing now, and they were like, oh, you're a developer, like, you know, like they just like, and I wasn't getting this all the time. So I wanted to ask you, when you were growing up, obviously you're very successful right now, but when you were a young girl, did you ever come across someone telling you that, like, why are you into this? Or like, did you have any experience as a young woman, like, and how did you overcome this adversity?
That's an interesting question, and surprisingly enough, that is more of an issue in the US than where I grew up. You know, India is not as advanced as US, obviously. However, for some reason, technology and STEM fields are very well accepted. Not only very well accepted, it's actually encouraged, right? It's probably a survival thing, because that's where the careers for and people who are naturally getting into science and technology, and there was absolutely no difference. Back in India was where I had the most diverse class or most diverse work experience or anything like that, because in my class when I was in engineering, we were 40% girls, 60% guys. It was that high. Yeah, so thankfully I didn't have that problem, and probably that is one of the reasons I never felt it for a really, really long time in my career. And even during, you know, early days of my career, I did not feel it at all. It's only now, as I'm reaching more higher levels in my career, that I'm actually starting to feel that, okay, now I'm seeing what people have been talking about, right? So, but it was very different. But it's unfortunate that in the US, with all the advances and progression and everything else, here in schools, I find that it is very different. Even my friends who are Indian parents, their kids, girls, don't go to STEM fields at all. I just don't get it. It's unfortunate. I mean, you all have to take a role in that, and if you are parents or if you're going to be parents, please keep that in mind. The funnel is really the issue, and encourage girls to take those roles.
So one thing I would say in addition to that, I think Vijaya made a great point about sometimes the hardest times in our lives in general are real opportunities for us to be able to set an example and do something positive with it. So I think about things like that. A lot of it, when it comes to not going to STEM, is there aren't a lot of, just like the question around who should we be looking up to in cybersecurity as a woman, it's like crickets, right? It's hard to answer that question. When you think about young girls who are looking up, they don't look up and see all these people who are surrounded who are female, women in cybersecurity. So even using that as an opportunity, there might be different programs and things that you could go talk to schools, or you could talk at different events and things like that, to be able to help them see, hey, there is somebody with a name, not like, oh sure, women do it. It's kind of like, yeah, I know you, I don't know what your name is, but it's using, okay, nice to meet you, but it's an opportunity for you to be able to go and show that, because it is hard when they're surrounded by their parents and other people who are saying, no, that's not a normal thing that people do. But if they can say, hold on, actually, there was this person that I heard speak, and people do actually do that, right? So some of it is just giving the opportunity where role models like Vijaya as an example, right? To be able to say, okay, I can relate to that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that there actually is when it comes to people, particularly girls, when they're younger, going into the field and feeling included from an early age.
Thank you. And then, I wanted to mention that one of them was volunteering here. It's like kind of like a boot camp school for women. It's called Head Right. And then I met this girl. She was from high school. She was probably 16 or something. She was really interested in computer science. And she told me when she was trying to take that class in her school, it was like a lot of guys, like mostly just guys, and they were literally telling her like, what are you doing here? Like, you don't belong here. And sometimes you work on a project and you form groups, and she was like, they're excluding me. And I felt so bad like talking with her. I was like, you should really don't give up, and stick with it and really try to learn it. If that's what you like, if that's what you're passionate about. And I feel like a lot of people are just they say, oh, this opportunity to learn, this opportunity who you can mentor, but I think it's important to address the social problem too. Like when it's coming from that, you know, like a value of women is placed on their looks, and it's just everywhere. So I feel a big part of why also girls that having a hard time is because they have this pressure since very young age, and it puts the topic that I feel like is very important too.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that's in cybersecurity or just in general, right? If you think about executive things like that, I mean, when I was first starting my career, it was like, you need to wear glasses, you look too young, and that's pretty much been my entire career. So, but you learn a lot, and that's the thing to me is, there's giving an opportunity to be able to have somebody say, I can relate to this person, there are actually women who do this. But then also in those types of things, especially with girls when they're, you know, teenagers or they're developing, they're going to be more insecure. They are in situations like that. So sure, we could try to change the boys in that situation, or we could do that, and or I would say it's also like, how do you as a mentor give encouragement or help them see how to navigate those types of things? Because if they can learn that early on, it's going to help them as they go, right, to be able to navigate even more complicated types of things. So I personally get really excited about that type of thing and coaching and mentoring and everything else. So it's a passion for me. And I do think it's one of those things that you can actually make a real difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I feel like we have a good reach out programs to like young girls in schools and like specifically targeted to them, you know, since young age, and bring them to summer called, like in my college we have this thing, it's called like summer of security or something, and we bring girls from high schools and we teach them like cybersecurity stuff, and I think it's really great, and it shows them that it doesn't matter if they're girls, they can do it, and it's like actively trying to engage them. That's really good.
And not giving up and just basically pushing back on them is really all of us have to do, and all of us have to encourage our younger girls to do that as well, right? Because you and only you know what is best for you. Who's that guy to tell you whether you should be in this room or not? Why are you here? Go do something else. Right.
So one of the things that you said that you didn't feel, you didn't feel discouraged early on. I read, there's a book that I read, and it was like Nice Girls Over the Corner Office, and there were two things in there that had kind of haunted me for a while. One was, which was kind of a good thing, I think, that I read, and it said that the most successful women who have actually like reached to CEO level and whatnot, have never felt that being a woman has stood in their way. That was one. The most successful women have never felt that being a woman had stood in their way of success. That was one. So actually that was my main question. I kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were, like if you kind of referenced it in something you said about like kind of seeing what else you can do, like so yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And the other thing was to never bake. I'm so afraid of baking at work because I'm afraid, like it said, never bake, never bake, never bring cookies, never bring cookies to work. And so yeah, so I'm really afraid to bake.
That is funny, actually, you say that, right? Even baking aside, even if you have pictures of your kids or whatnot in a man's office or something, it's like, oh, he cares about family, he's a great person. And if you have the same pictures in a woman's office, it's like, okay, all she cares about is her family, right? The messages completely changes in those situations. Unfortunately, I can't deny that happens, right? But there is something to it, and I have noticed that too. But again, you have to think about, ultimately, it's about you and being authentic, right? Today, in this particular situation, this person may judge you in a certain way, but you can't let your life be run based on that, right? You go to a different place where it is better or they're more accepting, that's really where you want to be, right? What's that? They accept your cookies and they appreciate what you bring to the table, right? But that is an important point though. I have noticed that too, and it's funny, it sounds funny, but it is actually, there is a thing like that. So you're not dreaming it. It is true. That happens.
Hi. A lot of relationship building and networking and business kind of happens after hours, and oftentimes when it's a lot of men, it's easy for men to, go grab a drink afterwards or dinner or, organize poker night, but it's not as easy for a woman to kind of get invited to those things. How have you kind of navigated those informal social interactions when you've worked in kind of a boys' club?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that you cannot completely overcome ever, right? Even to this day, I don't go involved with all these people that go and buddy up and spend their weekends because I have other things to do during the weekend. But that said, again, if you're in a place where your true worth is measured just by whether or not you're socializing with us and hanging out with us, that's probably not a good place for you anyways, right? It's an indication of, hey, this is something that I should move away from. And do your best in terms of socializing during work hours and building those relationships, right? It's not just about meetings that you need to go and meet the person, but take the time to spend outside of meetings and build a relationship proactive during work hours and during the normal course of business, right? As long as that rebels go to that fashion, I don't think not going out for drinks or something should stand in your way. But if it truly does, in some cultures and toxic cultures it does, then it's not the right place for you.
Any other questions out there? No. I just wanted to say something quickly. So yeah, I've been helping coordinate this event, and I can trace it back to a time when I was working at a nonprofit in DC, and I went to a smaller conference, and the Dean of Harvey Mudd, Maria Klawe, spoke about development and how it's such a good career for women, and that small thing make me want to be here. So little things like that.
Everything helps. Every single thing helps. That's why all of us are here, and why we feel passionate about whatever it is. It's not that we've accomplished so much in our lives that we can now come and tell you guys what the formula is. That's not about. It's not what it is about, right? It's about the little things, every single thing that. Maybe that works for me, and maybe if I share it with you, maybe that works for you. And you go and tell 10 other people, and that's just kind of how we build that community, right? So every one of you should feel like you can come up here and share your experiences and help other people, like you were talking about. That's a 15-year-old girl, a 16-year-old girl. You should be talking to her and encouraging her to stay with STEM as an example. Absolutely, everything matters. Every bit matters.
Anyone else?
I will, so it sounds like a good time. Yeah. Okay, so somebody brought up hair. I get asked a lot about clothing. And so just since somebody brought up hair, I think we should talk about it. And from the perspective of, I don't know about you, but when I started in business, I was given a dress code, and thank God. Because as you said, I am the CEO that didn't ever run into the issues until I was in my late 30s and in a much higher level. And so, but if I wasn't given that dress code, I wouldn't have made it as fast as quickly. And I'm not saying I love that we all have to dress professional. I'm just saying I know that's the fact, because the guys are all dressing in suits. So at least if you're playing in the perspective of careers, and moving up and all that, it's definitely important. And yet I think that there's a lot of people that want to not make it important because of our beliefs of power. And trust me, I'm there with you as a Buddhist, so to speak. I'm not, if you had to label me, you could. And so how do we deal with this sort of the right to dress however we want, and yet society still says if you're not in a suit or some professional wear, you're not going to go very far. And so I think it's something that we as women have to really, to make our decisions. Go very far in terms of money.
Yeah, I think it's more from my perspective, or the way I think about it is, you need to dress professionally, you need to dress appropriate for the job, right? Whether it's a man or woman, it doesn't really matter. If your company culture is such that you have a certain type of dynamic that's going on, everybody is dressing in a certain way, it's more about that professionalism, not so much about if you're a woman looking like a man, but if you're an engineer, there's an engineer dress code. If you're an executive, there's an executive dress code. It's more of that informal way of doing things and keeping that in mind to look as professional as you can and give yourself the best chance, right? That's kind of how I think about it.
Or, I was told I had to wear a suit at 21 years old. I had to go buy suits. I remember saying to my parents, and I'm so thankful because, well, I didn't necessarily at that moment know I wanted to be an executive. Thank goodness it made me get there faster. So I'm saying, if you want to go, then dress it now. Because society judges how we dress. It judges how we talk, how we dress, right? What comes out of our mouth and our dress is still part of it. So, we're looking for formulas, and it's something to think about. Sure. So awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Maybe just one question.
Okay. Who's the last one?
So you were saying about the kids on your desk. So there's a bunch of stuff that I had just learned, if you have, if someone close to your family has cancer, don't mention it. If you have cancer, don't mention it. No, seriously, because they'll start trying to find something in your work. So just don't mention it. So that's another one, on the kids on your desk. My sister's in labor right now, and I told, and it's yesterday, and I told my boss, and he's like, and I said, I'm so worried, and he's like, kind of gave me, he's like, more people die in accidents, why are you worried? And anyway, but now, so now I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna seem like I care too much about, my sister, which I do, probably too much, but yeah, I'm just wondering if there's is there something that I can read that just says what not to do? Because I really do feel like there's a kind of I heard an executive at Groupon, a woman, a developer, who said that we have a small margin where we can't really, act, if we act passionate about something or emotional, but if a guy's screaming, he's passionate. So we kind of have just a smaller way that we have to communicate. And I'm just wondering if there's, something that you've read or seen that, anybody as well, but, that you can kind of, that I can reference.
Some women in general, anybody that's stereotyping and not knowing what they're talking about, right? But ultimately, we were talking about the dressing, there is a certain professionalism that you need to maintain. Man or woman, it doesn't really matter, right? What's appropriate in your environment? What's okay to say? What's not okay to say? And that could be different in different situations. In some cultures, people are much more friendly at work, and in some cases, they're very professional and won't talk anything personal. It really depends on your situation, where you are. Observe what is going on, right, and try to maintain the balance and professionalism more than anything else, right? There's no right or wrong. Don't talk about kids. Don't talk about labor. That's not how it is, right? Yeah, yeah.
I think we have to go soon, but we're done. We're done, yeah. But just to add to that really quick is you change that by changing culture, and if you have more women in a space, that space changes too.
Don't lose your humanity.
Yeah.
You can be human. Okay, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for participating, guys. Appreciate it.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, I saw the work that. I know. Okay, awesome. Okay, I'll be right back.
So good conference so far?
Huh?
It's been a good conference so far?
Oh yeah, it has. Sparks exceeded. What are
yes.
You,
so I'm live streaming this on YouTube. Yeah. Not like there's other video guys too, but they're no. It won't hear it. I can turn